When Maya wouldn't stop scratching her jaw, only for a pimple to appear, her parents knew she needed help. But when the doctors examined her face, they were horrified by what they discovered. Aaron and Emma Whittington were an ordinary couple, absolutely in love with their little girl, Maya. A bright-eyed, rosy-cheeked 7-month-old, Maya was everything they had ever dreamed of. She was a good baby, with very few issues, making their job as first-time parents seem like a breeze. So when Maya started acting up and rubbing her face excessively, Emma knew something wasn't right. So she whisked her off to the local clinic to see what the doctor would say. She was relieved to hear that this sort of behavior was quite normal at Maya's age. Rubbing of the face and cheeks often had to do with discomfort caused by teething. The doctors recommended some cold therapy and assured Emma that everything would be fine. But try as they could, Maya could not seem to get comfortable. No amount of teething gel or cold therapy was working for the baby, and she kept on rubbing her face. Then, one Saturday, their world was thrown into disarray when they discovered an inexplicable swelling just below Maya's jaw. It was a crisp autumn morning when the Whittingtons noticed a curious anomaly. Maya had been her usual cheerful self, cooing and gurgling in her crib. With her habit of rubbing her face, Aaron came in and picked his daughter up to give her some cuddles. But as Aaron cradled her, he felt the unusual bulge beneath her soft skin. He called out to Emma, concern etching his face, as he gently placed their daughter in her mother's arms. "Emma, look at this," he said, his voice quivering with worry. The couple peered closely at the swelling, which was rapidly growing in size. Whatever it was clearly getting worse and worse. Emma was petrified that it was some sort of infection they had missed. With increasing panic, they decided to rush Maya to the Hutchinson Regional Medical Center, the nearest hospital. They held on to hope, believing that the doctors would offer a quick diagnosis and a remedy for their daughter's discomfort. Upon their arrival at the medical center, the doctors at first assumed it was a simple infection. They assured the parents that it isn't uncommon for children this age to get this sort of infection, especially considering that they're just starting to get mobile and often put things in their mouth that they shouldn't. The Whittingtons felt a semblance of relief as they watched the medical staff administer an antibiotic to their daughter. They were reassured and sent back home, but the anxiety in their hearts lingered like a nagging doubt. The shock they had experienced earlier that day didn't disappear quite as quickly as they had hoped it would. They tried to trust in the treatment the doctors had suggested and just give it time to work. But as the weekend passed, the swelling continued to grow, transforming Maya's once cherubic face into something entirely unrecognizable. A lump the size of 1.5 golf balls now marred her jawline. What was once their joy, the apple of their eye, now resembled something out of a nightmare. It became quite clear that the treatment they had received was not working at all. Their anxiety grew. They knew they needed to do something. "She looked like Quasimodo," Aaron whispered, his voice heavy with emotion, as he remembered that fateful weekend. They knew they had to take action. This was not just an infection. Emma's maternal instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. Emma's motherly intuition drove her to make the decision that would ultimately unravel the mysterious ordeal. It was on a fateful Monday, with the swelling still growing and the peculiar pimple now adorning their daughter's deformed face, that Emma made the decision to rush Maya back to the hospital. "I just couldn't watch as my little girl squirmed in discomfort. Her lump was evolving and growing, and I knew deep down that there was something more to what I could see. I needed the doctors to be more thorough." When Emma arrived at the medical center, her heart was heavy with fear. The staff promptly examined Maya's condition. Their concern was palpable. Turns out, this was not a mere infection, this was something out of the ordinary, and they needed answers. Emma felt somewhat reassured that they now shared her concern. She felt confident that they were going to get to the bottom of it. The physician suspected a staph infection affecting Maya's lymph nodes, which had swelled to an alarming degree. Inspiration coursed through the Whittington veins as they watched helplessly, their faith in the medical professionals wavering a little more with each passing moment. As the doctor examined Maya, her little face contorted in pain, and the physician decided to take a bold step. She broke the pimple to try and drain it, a procedure that would reveal an extraordinary secret. Marks were drawn on Maya's face to measure the swelling, and intravenous antibiotics were administered to combat the infection. Now, they just had to wait and see if the doctor's actions were going to be effective. However, it was what happened next that would forever alter the course of Maya's life and leave the Whittington and the medical staff stunned beyond words. The very same day, as the doctor made her rounds, she observed a peculiar sight on Maya's face. A scab had formed, and what appeared to be a thin string of stick was emerging from the spot. Baffled, the doctor left the room, her mind racing to understand what she had just seen. How could such an unusual occurrence transpire? What could explain a foreign object embedded beneath Maya's delicate skin? The doctor's bewilderment left the Whittingtons anxious. They decided to leave the strange thing alone, reasoning that if it had not alarmed the doctor, there must be no immediate danger. However, as evening fell, their daughter's pediatrician, Drive Simmons, paid a visit that would change everything. Drive Simmons, a seasoned physician with years of experience, examined Maya's condition with a keen eye. Her curiosity was piqued when she spotted the odd protrusion. She wasted no time and put on a pair of gloves, her fingers trembling with anticipation. What could it be? She picked up a pair of tweezers and decided to try and remove it as gently as she could. She gently plucked the object. Slowly but surely, she pulled, but more and more kept coming out. The once white protrusion was now turning darker and darker in color, when all of a sudden, she was done. Everything had been removed, and what was left grasped in the tweezers simply shocked everyone. In between the pincers of the tweezers, she held a 2-inch-long black feather in her gloved hand. The room fell into a stunned silence. No one could fathom how a feather, of all things, had found its way beneath Maya's skin. The Whittingtons felt a mix of emotions, relief that they found what was troubling their daughter and confusion about the strange situation. How had they missed this? Where did the feather come from? They felt awful as parents. The prevailing theory among the medical staff was that Maya had swallowed or inhaled the feather at some point. It had likely pierced the inside of her cheek or throat, unbeknownst to anyone, and then, over time, her body had forced it out through the swollen area on her neck. The mere thought of such an occurrence was surreal and almost impossible to grasp. All those weeks when Emma had thought her daughter was teething turned out to be her daughter trying to rid of the irritation she was feeling from the feather in her cheek. Emma and Aaron felt awful. As the days passed and the whirlwind of emotion settled, the Whittingtons began to retrace their steps, trying to piece together how this incident had unfolded. The question that loomed was how Maya had come into contact with the mysterious feather. The couple shared the home filled with warmth and love, yet even the most loving of homes can be touched by the unexplained. Laid in their bedroom, they had a down pillow that had provided them with countless nights of restful sleep. However, it had been relegated to the laundry room for months, and Maya was rarely in their bed. The odds of her encountering the feather in such a manner seemed almost impossible. She has been pulling on the left side of her face for a couple of months, Emma recounted, her voice tinged with remorse. But their family desperately tried to support them, saying that it could have happened to anyone. No one in their wildest dreams would have just assumed that their baby had a feather in their cheek. They had done their best. As the Whittingtons attempted to come to terms with the extraordinary events that had unfolded, the hospital staff shared similar sentiments. In her 20 years on the pediatric floor, Sandra Maddys had never encountered a case like this. She recollected the occasional bizarre case, such as a child with hairbrush bristles lodged in their tonsils. But the presence of a feather beneath a child's skin was truly unprecedented. Sandra, along with her colleagues, could only imagine the pain Maya must have endured. Although Maya rarely cried, they understood that the immense swelling must have caused excruciating discomfort. The feather's presence had created a silent agony that Maya had borne with incredible courage. Her cries reserved for when the nurses probed her skin in their search for answers. But the ordeal was not yet over for Maya. The mysterious feather, once removed, had left a significant impact on her tiny body. The swollen area still contained a hard knot, roughly 4 cm in size, which refused to dissipate on its own. The Whittingtons faced the daunting possibility that their daughter would require surgery in Wichita to remove the lingering vestige of her inexplicable ordeal. Naturally, news like this did not stay quiet for long. In fact, people were astounded to hear the story about what the little girl had faced. The news of Maya's story spread rapidly throughout their small town, and soon, the entire community joined in a collective sigh of relief and wonder. The tale of a feather hidden beneath a baby's skin became a topic of conversation. Parents from far and wide began to share their own stories of peculiar things they had faced with their children. This helped to reassure the Whittingtons that they were not alone. Children are extremely unpredictable and sometimes can do the most bizarre things, regardless of how careful the parents may be. News outlets began to pick up the story, and reporters flocked to the quiet town in Kansas, their cameras capturing every moment as Maya became the center of a media frenzy. Her parents remained steadfast in their determination to see her through this unprecedented ordeal. Days turned into weeks, and a knot in Maya's neck showed no signs of relenting. The decision was made to proceed with surgery, and the Whittingtons found themselves preparing for yet another anxious experience in the hospital. They were just keen to have the whole ordeal behind them and to let their little girl resume life just as she should. The operation in Wichita was a testament to modern medicine's ability to confront the most unusual challenges. A team of skilled surgeons, nurses, and medical professionals came together to address the persistent knot. Thankfully, the surgery was a success, and the lingering knot, the last reminder of the mysterious feather, was finally removed. The Whittingtons were overjoyed to see Maya return to her normal, carefree self. The ordeal that had once plagued their family was now behind her. Maya's story became an inspiration to many, a testament to the extraordinary strength of the human spirit and the boundless love of parents for their children. As the years passed, the Whittingtons cherished every moment with their daughter. They worked hard at trying not to overreact to any other simple ailment. As a form of PTSD, they had become overly protective parents. A cold was never a cold, or a headache had to be something more sinister. Through counseling, they began working towards finding peace in the unusual and trying to reinforce their faith in God. For them to move on as a family and give their little girl the confidence she needed to face life, they would have to try and put the whole ordeal behind them. This was a difficult task for sure, but thanks to Maya's resilience and the way she was now thriving as a little girl, they found solace. When interviewed and asked what they could share from their experience, Emma encouraged mothers to trust their instincts. This is something that is often very much overlooked by the community as technology advances and healthcare becomes more accessible. But at the end of the day, a mother knows their child best, and she is the only advocate they have. She implored mothers to trust their instincts and get their children looked at if they were concerned. Thanks to Emma following her gut, she was able to get to the bottom of Maya's mysterious ordeal and ultimately save her girl from the extreme discomfort she was feeling. What a crazy story. It just goes to show that some things are never quite as they seem. Would you have trusted your gut in this situation? How would you have reacted to seeing a feather come out of your baby's cheek? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Next time.